The arraignment of suspended Central Bank of Nigeria CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele at the Federal Capital Territory FCT High Court in Abuja over 6.9 billion alleged fraud, procurement fraud of course, was stalled yesterday due to the absence of the second defendant, a female CBN employee, Yaro, who was indisposed. An application for the adjournment, the presiding judge, Justice Hamza Muazu, adjourned the matter to August 23rd, 2023.
Now, Emefiele will be arraigned alongside Yaro and her company, April 1616 Investment Limited, on 20 charges of procurement fraud, conspiracy, and conferring corrupt advantages on his associates. Federal High Court in Lagos yesterday struck out charges of illegal possession of firearms and ammunition preferred against Godwin Emefiele. To discuss further on the outcomes of the proceedings yesterday, we're joined by Jide Ologun. He's a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Mr. Ologun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure a lot of Nigerians expected that this would be the outcome after Emefiele's run as CBN governor. Doesn't happen very often, but it's pretty dramatic seeing the way things are turning out. I want to first of all start with the gun charge, which would look pretty funny when the news broke that was the initial charge. What do you make of the Nigerian government flipping from the gun possession charge to the procurement fraud now that we're talking about?
Now there are even 20 new charges to be pressed against the former CBN governor. And what the government has done is to withdraw that charge before the Federal High Court, talking about possession of firearms and ammunition. And what that will do is that it will enable the government to move the matter to Abuja with the new 20 charges so that it doesn't come off like you are duplicating your efforts, which will be further abuse of the rule of law. Because according to Justice Owebu, even the failure of the federal government to adhere to the order of the court that Emefiele should be surrendered to the correctional services for custody before fulfilling the bail conditions on the bail granted to him by the DSS amount to abuse of the rule of law. And right now, that case has been, that charge has been withdrawn. And if you look at Section 108 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015, it empowers the Director of Public Prosecution to initiate and withdraw any charge, and then that has been done properly. So we are now waiting for the 20 arraignments on the issue of 20 charges. And of course, some of those charges include abuse of office. And when you look at the DSS, for instance, that is deeply involved in this, the DSS, as State Security Service, was established as far back as 1986 via Decree 19. That was under IBB. And the role is to defend the federal government against domestic threats, uphold and enforce criminal laws in Nigeria, and provide leadership and criminal justice service to both federal and state law enforcement organs. So, and you recall also, there was a report on the 20th of December 2022 when DSS was moving against Emefiele on allegations of financing terrorism. So I think there are some hidden currents within the government circle that may soon come to the open, because at that point in time, it was difficult for DSS to get Emefiele arrested. And I can let us know that by the body language of the government currently, it may not be easy to get him out of government custody. I bring to the fore again the case of Nnamdi Kanu. Even when a court ordered that he should be released, he was not released and fresh charges were pressed against him. So right now, the battles are on. But by and large, there are legal provisions for all of this. And for some of the fresh charges that may be pressed against Emefiele, we have Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, that stipulates that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So, but we are waiting to see how the arraignment goes. Right. I must also underscore a statement by the Justice Weibo, that there is need for diligent prosecution. So what's the point keeping this charge in his court and not throwing it out if there won't be diligent prosecution of it? Because in the criminal justice ecosystem, you need thorough investigation, diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary.
All right. I'd like us to talk about the legality or otherwise of how Emefiele's case has been handled. He was arrested on the 10th of June, I believe, and wasn't brought before a court of competent jurisdiction until a number of days, roughly 35 days. And that was after, there had been an order that had been given by the court. Now, they had come under heavy criticism because even whilst the court had, given permission for him to be handed over to the State Correctional Services, nothing of the sort was done. There was a video. We all saw the video online. A physical squabble of some sort because they wouldn't hand Emefiele over. Now, you've admitted, and a number of people have actually said that that's an abuse of the rule of law, as the orders of the court was not, were not being obeyed. First of all, how do we ensure that we don't keep having repeat performances of scenarios like this? And so it's a two-part question I'm asking. How do we ensure that, we can ensure that we uphold the rule of law where the court gives an order and that order is being followed to the letter? And the second part of this question would be that, is it now safe to say that since that charge has been withdrawn, they are in the right to hold him in custody, seeing as they're, bringing forth fresh charges?
DSS will tell you they have the order of a court to hold Emefiele, that what they are doing is legitimate. But to what extent that can be established, I don't work for DSS. And on the need to respect the rule of law, I think in Nigeria and perhaps in Africa, it's a very tight expectation. Let me explain this. We have three arms of government. We have the legislative arm, they make the laws. We have the judiciary, they interpret and adjudicate and pronounce on the efficacy of the law. We have the executive arm that executes. And this time around, this order is given to be executed by the executive arm that has chosen to be the giant. You see, I mentioned the case of Nnamdi Kanu. There are several cases like that. So, and the respect for the rule of law is the hub of democracy, it's the hub of national development, it's the hub of even attracting foreign direct investments into your nation. So what can we do? And it's a question of accountability. How can we hold our leaders accountable, whether at personal level or institutional level? So here we are now. And then you saw the fight between DSS and the correctional services officials just to ensure that Emefiele was not released to the correctional services people. And again, we have systemic crisis in the nation because the argument of some is that if Emefiele was released to the correctional services people, by now he's likely to have jumped out of the country because the correctional services institution cannot be trusted. And that can also be underscored by the number of jailbreaks that we had in Nigeria under the last 10 years. So we have in our hands a situation where we cannot boast of effective governance system in the country. So DSS is out to resolve some issues in Emefiele. DSS is not trusting a twin agency, permit me to use agency now, to assist them in ensuring that Emefiele is available to answer questions in respect of allegations against him. But I have said it earlier, and permit me to echo it here, that before you even embark on a prosecution, on arraigning anyone you allege of criminal offenses, your investigations must have been concluded. You see, and that is again a systemic issue. And I bring as reference now the case of Ekweremadu, Senator Ekweremadu in the UK. Before he was arrested, the Metro, they have concluded their investigation. So it was not that he was arrested, charged to court, and they went to town seeking for investigation. No. So thorough investigation had been done and diligent prosecution was carried out because that matter was in court for just about 6 weeks before a committed judiciary. And a statement was made that the United Kingdom will not tolerate modern slavery and organ trafficking. So these are issues of our time. So we still have a long way to go in giving the right place of honor to the rule of law.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we are watching how this unfolds.
Yeah, one thing you just mentioned is that the DSS is out to settle, issues, and so I want you to speak further on that, because some people have described the whole Emefiele saga as, just politics being played, out here. It's not necessarily because of the crimes that he's alleged to have committed, the financial crimes that he's alleged to have committed. It's mostly a political game. Maybe he's being punished, for certain things here and there. So I want you to speak, on that. Do you also see signs that it's not necessarily because they're financial crimes that he committed that he needs to be, interrogated and prosecuted for, but instead he's been, punished for the role that he played, maybe in the build-up to the elections or in the time that he was CBN governor? Because as CBN governor, you never act alone. If there's billions of naira that are being missing here and there's many other people that should also be named along with him. But as we always see it in Nigeria, it's just one person that turns out to be the scapegoat of every administration. It's either Desiani or the NSA, can't remember his name now, or now it's Emefiele.
Like I mentioned earlier, the DSS, though self-styled DSS, is the state security service. And the major function is to defend and protect the federal government against domestic threats, to uphold and enforce criminal laws in Nigeria. And I said it earlier too, that even when former President Muhammadu Buhari was in office, the DSS moved to arrest Emefiele, but they could not because he was alleged to be sponsoring terrorism. So what we would have expected is that all these allegations that were in the custody of the DSS were ruled out at the same time as against just the allegation of possession of firearm and ammunition, which has been withdrawn from the court now. So I cannot clearly tell you that this is just a political vendetta. Recall that we have a cloud around the Naira swap and the Naira redesign. And again, there are insinuations that the CBN under him could have gone into some deals and that even some top flight investors could have enjoyed some special favors. And that is why I made reference to Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, that says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. Definitely, there should be questions to answer on what happened to our forex window, that has made our Naira to be so...
And pretty much the same thing with the Naira redesign. I apologize, we're running out of time. I'm trying to get as much as I can out of it. I'm sure there's also questions that need to be asked about the Naira redesign that failed. But I want your quick predictions on how you think this would play out. As always, there's a lot of drama. Many times, these persons never, the former EFCC chairman, nobody knows what
there will always be drama, but the law is not driven by sensationalism. Look at the Presidential Election Tribunal. Oh, let's view it at 24/7 and this and that. But lawyers have gone there to present their evidence, bring their witnesses. A law is based on fact and law, not on sensation. And so if some are claiming, and let me say this also, under the Constitution, the defendant in a criminal matter is assumed innocent until these charges are proved beyond all reasonable doubts. But if the DSS is saying there are questions for Emefiele to answer, so be it. The man I made reference to, Ekweremadu, defended himself before the court. He was given the right of fair hearing. So, but when we have all those charges coming out, We are not the ones to go and defend Emefiele. He has a team of brilliant lawyers. And if at the end of the day, those charges cannot be proved beyond all reasonable doubts, he will be released by the court. But right now, I think the federal government is not done with the matter. So
right.
let's just watch and see how all this will unfold. He will be given the right to defend himself in the course of the prosecution. It's not arbitrary. All right, and that is why he pleaded not guilty. So if he pleaded guilty, it should have helped to quickly conclude. So if he has pleaded not guilty, it is the business of the prosecutor to prove that he is guilty. And if the prosecutor fails to prosecute diligently, he will be released.
Like you said, we're going to uphold
enough evidences to nail him to those offenses, then he may be punished for the offenses.
Yeah, like I said, we're going to hold on to the presumption of innocence because of. Sorry, sir. At this point, permit me to interject because we have to wrap up. We have another conversation we have to get into immediately. But like you said, we're just going to hold on to the presumption of innocence that the Constitution affords him, innocent until proven guilty. So we're going to have to wait and see how all of this turns out. Thank you for your time with us this morning.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.